وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم إننا ما نتعلم التعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير والحث والتمسك بكتاب الله والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسول الله ابتغاء مرضات الله وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. Praise Allah Azza wa Jalla, praise that's worthy of a beneficent bestower of bounties and favours, and we ask our Lord Most High to send copious and unlimited and eternal blessings and salutations upon our beloved Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we teach and learn, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. So alhamdulillah, if we continue bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala on what the Imam, at the moment it's a gathering of different ahadith and different statements from and verses of the Qur'an for those people that inshallah azza wa jalla have done their best to try and embody what Imam Haddad has spoken about and the different aspects of one's assistance in terms of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the rest of the book. So this is like the icing on the cake, if one might say. Through these ahadith and through these select verses of the Qur'an and through these select sayings of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and sayings of the pious people, that bi'idhnillah azza wa jalla, it illuminates the heart of that individual who's taken on board the words of Imam al-Haddad and the words of Allah azza wa jalla and the Prophet of Allah and the righteous previously in the rest of the book. The person who has seriously undertaken that endeavour will be enlightened inshallah azza wa jalla and illuminated by these words. And as they say, it's husn al-khitam, it's the most excellent of conclusions in terms of course, the book, but that's not the point. The husn al-khitam is for ourselves. What the takeaway is for us, what benefit we're going to take, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from understanding what Imam Haddad has collated in this book and how that applies to our lives, and how bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that bi'idhnillah will not only change us for the better, but bi'idhnillah azza wa jal make us of those people that are considered the khawas, or the elect in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is what everyone really wants. In reality, everyone wants to be determined or considered special, or considered not a number, so to speak, but an individual. And in terms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's what those people who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are. يَصْطَفِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ حَتَّى مِنَ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ. Even from the prophets, Allah azza wa jal, فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that some of them we raised ranks of some of the prophets over other prophets. So it's not just for the normal people like us, but it's for the best of Allah azza wa jal's creation, the prophets. And so in our worldly lives, we seek promotions and we seek expertise and we seek to be recognized in whatever way it is we're recognized in whatever industry we're involved in, or even if it's at school, we want to get an award for whatever, teacher's pet, whatever they call these days, get stars and smiley faces or whatever they give out these days, and rewards. Everyone wants to be rewarded. Everyone wants to be recognized. There was a time when a human being was nothing even to be remembered. And so we're the opposite of that. Allah mentions, the Mufassirun mentioned that's one of the ladhat, I suppose, one of the shahawat, one of the desires of human beings is to be that. Is to be differentiated from other human beings and to be differentiated from other creations. And that's what fashion's about, isn't it? Fashion's the differentiation of one individual, and in particular a female. Now it's male as well, don't worry about that now. It's manscaping and the rest of it. But it's the differentiation of one individual from the group. And so that's part of it's in some ways it's good if we're seeking illumination and differentiation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a positive thing. Yet if we're seeking that differentiation amongst the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it's competing for dunya. It's competing for materialism. It's competing for this terrestrial world, this dirt. It's a competition over dirt, really. And it's a competition that's fani, as they say. It's short-lived, it's temporary, it's not even a permanent long-term competition. Whereas those who are in competition, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, compete, run quickly to the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Sahaba, they used to compete. Right? When Sayyidina Umar, Allah marda'anu, bring half his wealth, he was competing against Sayyidina Abu Bakr for Tabuk, for Ma'rakat Tabuk. He was competing, and then Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Allah marda'anu, would bring everything, and he realized, I'm never going to beat this bloke. That is a positive, that's positive competition. That's what we should be involved in. That's what we should be, even in our own class when we had competition about who could do the most salawat or whatever. It's a positive competition. That's why we do these things, to encourage each and every single one of us to compete. You know, and whether we do or we don't is up to us. But if we don't, we're missing out, because that's part of the sunnah. If they did it, the Sahaba, and the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell them not to do it, that's a sunnah, khalas. And so they used to do that. And unless we seek that individuality in Allah and with Allah and by Allah and through Allah, anything else that we seek in this life will be the cause of detriment to us, the cause of harm to us. And so Imam al-Haddad, he understands that when a person starts to seek knowledge, when a person starts to get an inclination of understanding about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and about the life in which we lead and about themselves and about the returning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the next life, it can affect one's own understanding of themselves. And it can create, when a'udhu billah azza wa jal, self-delusion. That, oh yeah, I've studied the book, I've been doing it for years, and I've practiced whatever I learned, and etc., etc. So it can create arrogance when a'udhu billah. And that's, as we said last week, that's the worst form of arrogance, is one's understanding of the deen. Because that's the opposite of what deen is supposed to do. Deen is supposed to increase us in humility. And that's what the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, resurrect me on the day of judgment amongst the disenfranchised. Because in reality, we're all disenfranchised. Except those person who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or those people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enfranchises. In other words, those people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives His divine support to. And so, when we live a physical reality of our spiritual state, that's sidq. When we live a physical reality of our spiritual state, then that's sidq. Right? If we're dressing a particular way to impress people, and inside we don't feel that way, then we're not being true to ourselves. The sidq, being true to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as an example. So when a person's exterior reflects their interior and vice versa, then that's the truth. And Abu Bakr, Allah marda'anu, he was like that. Right? The Prophet said in the hadith that don't let your gowns, they didn't used to wear pants. So I don't know how it got to the pants back, how it is now, but they used to wear the izar and things like that. Don't let your cloak drag behind you like the kings of, whoever he mentioned, alayhi salatu wasalam, the different kings that were there. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Allah marda'anu, he was so skinny because he was a zahid, he was an ascetic. He rejected the dunya. Even one time he saw a bird got stuck in the thorns got stuck in the bushes in the orchard, and he said, I wish I was never born. I wish I was like that bird that it doesn't get judged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the wara, the scrupulousness. And we've done scrupulousness, so you know what it is. And if you've forgotten, it'll take you 5 minutes to read the chapter, maximum. It'll take you 2 or 3 minutes to read the chapter. Remind yourself. That's how he was. And so even that hadith where he was so thin because he rejected all forms of self-pleasure, if you like, and self-indulgence more correctly, that even his izar is like the Indonesians, what they call it, sarong. You know what a sarong is, don't you? Yes or no? Like it's a piece of material that they wrap around. Like I don't know, what are the names of it? A sarong is the Indonesian name, isn't it? And they call it izar. Yeah? All right. Lungi, in the subcontinent people call it a lungi.
Yeah, the lungi and izar.
Do you know, can you, what is it? What is it? Explain to me what it is so the sisters can understand that don't know.
It's like a kind of a skirt you can cover yourself
Yeah, but blokes wear it. You know, not women. Women don't wear it. Right? It's a skirt for dudes, if you like that. Okay? Do you understand now? So he used to wear it, but he was so skinny, he used to always drag down off his hips and come below his hips, and then it would go below his ankles. And he said, yeah, because the Prophet said, whoever gown drags behind them, that person will be in the hellfire. And so he was so worried, Ali Allah Sayyidina Abu Bakr, right? Because his izar used to come down, right? His sarong, whatever you want to call it, used to come down below his knees. And he said, the Prophet, am I going to burn in hell because of it? He said, no, that's not you. The reason why he was like that is because he was so skinny. So his exterior reflected in other words, his external state reflected his internal state. That's sidq. That's sidq. That's his Abu Bakr al-Siddiq. He's the ultimate example of being true to Allah and being true to himself. And Imam Haddad's helping us walk that path so that we don't deviate through the knowledge that we have. That's what happened to Shaitan. He deviated. His knowledge is what made him deviate. Yeah? His understanding of the things, how they work in the universe, that's what got him off the path when A'udhu Billah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam Haddad, he talks about, he gives us those summaries of those hadith, and it's a chance for us, like we did the week before, to consider things we did that were reactionary and out of spite, to consider whether we treated ourselves amongst the masakin or not. If we considered ourselves, make a bit of room if you don't mind, brothers. Right? So he says it is a chance for us during that week to think for ourselves about where do we place ourselves? Where do we want to be? Who do we want to be with? Who do we want our friends to be? Who do we want to remember us? Who do we want to speak about us in what kind of gathering, in what way? And the Prophet of Allah, his choice was the disenfranchised. Right? It doesn't mean that you don't have friends that are high flyers or whatever you want to call them. It means who do you want to be with though? Sometimes you're with those people for particular reasons. But who do you yearn to be amongst? Inside, who is it that you love to be with? Which crowd, if you like, do you want to hang with? Who's your clique, if you want to put it another way? But who inside? And then the sacrifices that people make to be part of a particular group. And you notice friends, they dress the same. If the guy wears a hoodie, normally his mate wears a hoodie. Sister wears hijab, her friend wears hijab. She's got long black hair, her friend's got long black hair. The guy wears runners or sneakers or whatever you call them, then his mate is wearing them. You notice that people, they gather, the cliques, they gather together and they become similar. And so what sacrifices do people make to be accepted by another group of people? And so we have to ask ourselves that question. What sacrifices are we prepared to make to be amongst the elect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the elite of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lords and loves and praises. And so Imam Haddad gives us another chance to do that by recounting another hadith. He says, قال المؤلف رحمه الله رضي الله عنه وعنكم نفعنا به وبكم وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الله سبحانه وتعالى ابن آدم قم لي أمشي إليك وأمشي إلي أهرول إليك عفوا ابن آدم اذكرني ساعة ساعة من أول نهار وساعة من آخره أكفيك ما بين ذلك عفوا ابن آدم لا تعجز أن تصلي لي 4 ركعات من أول النهار أكفيك آخرة. We'll just do that part for now, inshallah. So can everyone see a copy of the text? You got a copy? Yeah. So he says on page 129, and God the Exalted has said, O son of Adam, get up for me, and I shall walk to you. Walk to me, and I shall run to you. O son of Adam, remember me for a while at the day's beginning, and a while at its end, and I shall suffice you for whatever lies in between. O son of Adam, do not fail to pray 4 rakats at the beginning of the day. I shall suffice you thereby for its end. So Imam Haddad again, by recounting that specific tradition of the Prophet of Allah, he's reminding us of the reality of our deeds. The reality of إن الله اشترى من المؤمنين أموالهم وأنفسهم بأن لهم الجنة. What the recompense, what Allah subhanahu what Allah has purchased from us. In other words, the deal that Allah Azza wa Jal, the bargain, if you like, the deal that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made with humankind. He's allowing us, he's taking our minds back to that. He's taking our hearts back to that. He's taking our souls back to that. The initial ahad, if you like, the initial covenant between Allah Azza wa Jal and humankind. So that's why Allah Azza wa Jal says, Ya ibn Adam, the son, O son, and in the Arabic language, ibn is both son and daughter. It has both double connotations, although in the English language, like I said, it should be gender neutral language, but we haven't got to that stage yet, but inshallah we will. He says, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, of course, the Hadith Qudsi then, he says, stand for me. And the standing is double connotation. Stand, in other words, do something for me, and then stand also be firm. But in this context, because he says, Allah, I will walk towards you. Now, do something little for me, I'll do more for you. Just get up for me. Stand firm on your deen. Stand firm on your salat. Stand firm on your hijab. Stand firm on your hayat, on your humility. It's not really humility, hayat. It's bashfulness. It's not even that either. It's more like your morality, if you like. Be firm in your morality. Be firm in your speech. Speak the truth, even if it's against yourself. And I will walk to you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I will walk to you. I'll come to you. Do something a little bit for me and I'll do more for you. He's saying subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, and walk towards me, and I will, harwil is to, it's not quite running, harwil is a bit different. It's like a speedy walk, yeah. What does he say? I shall walk to you. So it's more than a walk, right? So when inshallah, yeah, it's a bit more than that even. So what they describe it as, when you go to the beach and you walk on the hot sand, how do you walk? Right? It's like, quick so your feet don't, like a waddle or whatever you want to call it, but so your feet don't get burned. That's the example the scholars give, because they're desert people, so they know what it's like to walk on the hot sand. The hadawil is like, quickly moving your feet without really running, but it's faster than a walk. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, walk to me and I shall run. Yeah, it's dignified, certainly it is. Yeah, it's not a full sprint, like that. So it's not really a run either. It's not specifically a run. It's faster than a walk, but it's not as quick as a run. Exactly like walking on hot sand. That's the example the scholars give when they describe it. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, walk, and I'll come quicker. A brisk, if you like, walk. Power walk, if you want to call it that. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, whatever little you do, I'm going to do more. Whatever effort you make, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, my karam, my grace is greater than that. To remind us that our deeds and our actions are not what we rely upon. That's not what we think about. It's Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, irrespective of our deeds. And that means good or bad. That means good or bad. Because one of the chapters we did was al-inaba, how to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what does the hadith say? Itba' al-hasana tamhuha. Or kama qala alayhi salatu wassalam. If you do something wrong, follow it immediately with a good deed. In other words, don't despair. Don't despair. Because that despair is relying on what? When a person sins and does something incorrect, and they get down on it, right? They're down on themselves. They're down. They despair. What does that mean? It does. So what does that mean in terms of all their deeds? What's the state of that individual who, when they do something sinful or wrong or whatever, mistake, whatever, they get down and they don't want it. They go into like mini depression, whatever you want to call it, mini breakdown, right? Exactly what the Hajj is saying. That person is relying on their deeds. We don't rely on our deeds. Well, what are our deeds? What are they? What are our deeds? Makhluk. Right? Yes or no? Yes. Who relies on a makhluk? Who relies on a creation? No one should. Okay? But the believer certainly doesn't rely on anything that's created, do they? Who do they rely on? The Creator, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why the inaba, make a mistake, of course we feel bad. Of course we repent instantaneously. Tawbah straight away. Nasuha. But it doesn't put us in a state where we don't immediately, oh, I'm not worthy to worship Allah. When were you ever worthy to worship Allah? How is it that we actually worshipped Allah? If a person worshipped Allah, through what means did a person worship Allah? Is that how we worship Allah? What means is it what's the way, how are we given the tawfiq to worship Allah? Right, through Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not through what I've done. I'm never worthy. Right, but if I think that I'm worthy because I've done a good deed, that's the beginning of my problems right there. Because that means I've become exactly. And I'm relying on what? Makhluk instead of khaliq. Whether I do good or bad, my state to myself, the way I look at myself shouldn't change. Because I don't judge myself. Who judges me? Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how can I put myself on a particular... Am I sure my intention was 100% right? And if it was at the beginning, was it after a little while? And towards the end? And did I fulfill the full right? I don't think so. So how am I gloating? Oh, ujub it's called. How am I self-deluded in terms of what I think my deeds are? When I'm relying on makhluk, which is the deeds. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, hey, no matter what you do, no matter what you think you've done, no matter whether you got up or you walked on water, or you walked through fire, it's through me. And whatever little bit you do, I'm going to do more. In other words, we can't, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ishtara min al-mu'minin, there's a recompense there, there's Allah's rewarding us for the deeds. We can't match how are we going to be thankful for everything Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us? It's impossible, we can't. So that should increase us in humility. All right. And then what does he say? He says, Ibn Adam, اذكرني ساعة من أول النهار وساعة في آخر أكفيك ما بين ذلك. He says, remember me for a while. He says, sa'a, and the sa'a doesn't mean exactly an hour. It means just a portion of time. So remember me for a portion of time at the beginning of the day, and a while at its end, and I shall suffice you for whatever lies in between. So we come back to that I suppose, classic, if you like. The biggest event to occur every day is what? Right? And? Sunrise, sunset. There's no bigger event. It doesn't matter what the world news is saying and whatever, someone in sport changed teams, ooh, big stuff, right? And someone made a new album, or someone did a new movie. I know that's all big news and all that, or whatever, government changed. It's all big. There's nothing compared to the world being in darkness and then all of a sudden being in light. That's the world. Nothing isn't affected except certain places in the middle of the ocean and certain caves where there's light doesn't get to. But the very, very vast majority of the earth is affected. And had it not been for the light, even those things in the ocean where the light doesn't get, wouldn't be able to live, because they're just a roll-on effect of the sun. And even in the things in the caves and wherever else that we don't know where the light gets to, if the light didn't get to everywhere else, those things wouldn't be able to exist anyway. So everything on earth is touched by it. If it's cold, just turn off the thing. Okay? So that's the biggest event. Yet it's the one we pay pretty much least attention to. It's the biggest event. And then same thing. The whole earth was bathed in light and heat, and then at sunset, no longer. It's not anymore, but we don't pay attention to it because we're removed from it. Like if you've ever gone to the country where there's no lights and it gets dark, you know how dark it is? Has anyone ever gone? Put your hand up if you've ever been out to the country where when it gets dark, there's no lights around. You have to go. How dark? You can't even see that. That's how dark it is. So we've got artificial light, so that's why we don't notice the setting of the sun and the rising of the sun and whatever else. That messes us up as well, messes up our circadian rhythms and whatever else. But of course, if you don't have these lights, you're going to see how powerful that is. And you're going to know, well, it's a big thing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, at that time, remember me. At that time, remember me. That's a time to remember Allah Azza wa Jal at the beginning, and that's Fajr, really. The time of Fajr, it's such a blessed time that the person who prays Fajr, and particularly in the masjid, for the brothers and the sisters otherwise, you pray at home, and sits from the time of the Fajr prayer up until the Shuruq, and they pray the rak'atan, the Shuruq meaning the sunrise, and they wait about another 20-25 minutes, and they pray two rak'at. It's as though they went to Hajj. It's a complete Hajj and Umrah. It's a complete Hajj and Umrah just for doing that, because it's that remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
You have to be at the masjid until
It's better if you can, but if not, it's okay.
you still get that reward.
Inshallah, if you can keep it in that, you can keep that if it's at home, wherever it is. But the masjid, of course, is the best place, because we're supposed to pray all our salat if we can possibly in the masjid. If not, then put the intention for. If we got an excuse, it's a different story. But if we just didn't go because out of laziness, that's when we won't. That won't count for us, for anyone. But if it's whatever the story, it's far. We have to go to work at a certain time. Whatever. If we've got a reasonable excuse, then it's okay. But if there's no excuse, then I'm not going to cut the mustard, as the Americans say. It's not going to cut it. It's not good enough.
No, like you pray at the masjid and then you go, but you still stay awake till duha.
It's better to do it in the masjid, because the hadith says, and they sit, they say sitting, jalis, or jalisan I think it is. Whoever stays sitting in that masjid, so it's the remembering Allah, doing the Qur'an, doing your awrad, whatever else you're doing, and then the shuruq comes. The Prophet ﷺ at the time of shuruq, because it's about 20-25 minutes, he used to gather the Sahaba, they used to talk about things that aren't too heavy. He used to talk what did people see in their dreams, what's going on. It was like, time that he used to do that, alayhi salatu wasalam. And then when the sun is about 20-25 minutes after the sunrise, then they used to pray the duha, and everyone go on their way. Right? So that changing of what's happening on earth through the sun, everything changes, even the wind. The wind changes, and you look, normally at night the wind's not as powerful. During the day the wind's more powerful. Things change because there's a humongous force that's affecting the earth. And that force that's affecting the earth is so powerful that it changes the way the earth functions and the way we function. It says, if you remember me in the morning, you remember me in the evening, or sunrise and sunset, I'll take care of what's in between. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. It says, Ibn Adam لا تعجز أن تصلي لأربع ركعات من أول النهار أكفيك آخره. So he says, don't fail to pray, Allah, O son of Adam, do not fail to pray 4 rak'ats in the beginning of the day. I shall suffice you thereby for its end. So, those are the salat al-duha. And Imam Haddad's a Shafi'i, and the Shafi'is, they say that the duha, which is any time after the shuruq, so about 20-25 minutes after the sunrise, up until about 5 or 10 minutes, about 5 minutes before dhuhr. Except on Jum'ah, today, you can pray even up to dhuhr. It's not a problem. So the minimum is 2 rak'at, and the most is 8. Okay? The most is 8. وَأَكْمَلُهَا 4. And the best is 4. That's the best. And the sunnah is to read Kafirun, Qul Huwallahu Ahad in the first 2, that's the second, Washamsi. Yeah, Surah Al-Shams in the first rak'ah of the second set of rak'atan, and then Al-Duha in the second rak'ah of the second set. So the first one is Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Qul Falaq, and then the Shafi'i make taslim, and then you start a new set of 2 rak'at, then you read Washamsi wa Duhaha in the first rak'ah, and Wa Duha in the second rak'ah. And then Imam al-Suhrawardi says that's the best time to do istikhara about anything in your life. Because people, they only do istikhara when they think there's a big thing going. And there's actually another thing that we should mention about istikhara. Like alhamdulillah, the generation, you guys, your generation is a lot better than our generation, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Much better in terms of ibadat, much better in terms of community, much better in things that we never had. The thing with your generation is there's a lot of rigidness. Whatever your generation learnt, when they were 12 or 14 or whatever it was, that's it. And it's very difficult to pick up and learn anything new. That's what I noticed from people of your generation. Like I said, we've got plenty issues in my generation. Plenty. But no one here except me from my generation. So your generation, very rigid. And whatever, that's my experience. Whatever they learn, they have to have everything their own way. They can't listen to anyone else. They have to have everything. Everything's research. Habib, what are you researching? Google. What standard of knowledge and information you're getting from Google? Most of it's pretty average, you know what I mean? It's not peer reviewed. Most of it's not, you know what I mean? It's sorry to say that. I mean, it's good for a little bit of information, but you can't set your life on that. You can't do that. It's like watching the news and thinking that, no, like it's the same thing. Like that's my generation. We used to watch the news and say, I remember when I was in America one time in '92 when the LA riots were on. I was in Montana. It's about, nearly 2,000 kilometers away. People from Australia ring me, "You're right, man. What are you talking about?" "Oh, the riots. Habibi, the riots are in LA. I'm in Montana." That's how it was. And that's the same. Your generation, you can't do that. All right, if you come up to a PDF article, right, that's even if it's someone's thesis and doctorate, that's just their opinion. And who knows the standing of that person? Like, information has to be critically evaluated. You can't just go on Google and read something and say, "I've done my research." That's not research. It's a little bit of information. And I know like it's not what you want to hear, but what I want to do in the Allah Azza wa Jal is save you from that problem. I speak to people and they're like, "Yeah, I'm going to go research." Habibi, what do you know about that? Like the whole thing that's going on with Mufti Layth and all that. I don't know. I'll tell you right now, I don't know nothing about hadith. Like, I can't comment on it. I got no clue who's in the right and who's the wrong. I have no idea. I'm not a hadith specialist. No clue. Of course, there's no doubt in Bukhari and the actual chain of transmission, but he's talking about the whole compilation of the hadith. Hey, that's for them to argue. What am I commenting on? What am I commenting on? What do I know? I don't know. I'm telling me. I'm not saying anything. Me. I don't know anything. I'm just watching. Okay, that's his opinion. That's someone else's opinion, Mr. Brown. I don't know. I can't comment. And plus they're all talking about Maliki. I don't know anything about Maliki. Very little about the Maliki madhab. So just because I read it somewhere doesn't mean that it becomes the new truth. Right? And then ask yourself this question. How much do you read of Qur'an compared to how much do you read of Shaykh Google or Imam Google or Mufti Google? What's the comparison? How many hours do you spend there in the ether? And how many hours do you spend on the real book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How many? It doesn't. So that's making the generation, and like I said, much better than us. Much better than us. So it's something that we have to overcome. Right? That rigidity that I learnt this, and I'll have to find out for myself on every little thing. That's what the Dajjal actually and the Shaitan, that's what he wants. Because that's individualism. That's exactly what because that means everyone's doing their deen their own way. Everyone's doing their own deen in their own flavor. Wa na'udhu billahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone wants things to be his or her particular way. But that's not how it works. The deen is a wiratha. It's an inheritance. We're inheriting the knowledge of the prophets, who we took from someone, who took from someone, who took from someone, from Rijal Allah. That's where the madan, that's where the reality of the deen is. That's where the tangible, if you like, of the deen is. The scholars throughout history, Nahu, they said you can't just pick up a book and read unless you've got a certain amount of knowledge in it. So when it comes to this spirituality, when it comes to understanding our deen, It's not what you think it is. Just because I'm educated in a particular field doesn't mean I can understand the whole of the deen. Right? And so don't forget where we're at. We're at istikhara. The other brother was sitting with him and is saying, brother, there's a good sister for you. Oh, I have to think about it. What do you have to think about? What do you have to think about? Oh, I want to do my istikhara. And that's your istikhara right there. That's what we're talking about, huh? Istikhara. What does istikhara mean? Seeing dreams? Is that what the word means? No. Is it easy or hard? No, it's not easy or hard. It's khair. The last part of the word is khair. Istikhara. The khara comes from the word khair. Ista means to seek. Seek what's good. Don't get complex on me right now. Don't get looking up and hearing, and don't do that. It's simple. Our deen is simple. And that our deen being so simple, it's all right for you to add on to what you know. Don't just put the blinkers on and be scared of everything. Be scared of the sources, yes. Be careful of the sources of where things come from. Like this whole thing about the Bukhari, Mufti, he's a Mufti, right? The guy's gone through, he's probably one of the most educated English-speaking guys there is out there. And Jonathan Dr. Brown, he's extremely educated too. I mean, that's normal. Scholars have a difference of opinion. Yeah? It's normal. You don't have to have I have no opinion on the issue whatsoever. I don't know. It's not my job. Listen here, listen here. Do I have any doubt in Bukhari? No, not whatsoever. Is it the most sahih book after the Qur'an? I still say it is. Right? Because that's what my scholars taught me. Is the opinion of Mufti Layth valid? Yeah, it is, because he's qualified to make that opinion. Am I qualified to make that opinion? No. So I stay out of it. Because if I comment on it, and if I get involved in it, what's going to happen? My deen is going to get affected. So just because everyone goes against one of the opinions, we don't jump on bandwagons. That's not what we do. It's deducted reasoning, if it's legal ijtihad. So we need to get over that, right? We're talking only about one thing, istikhara. But the guy's like, I have to think about it. Yeah, but I showed him the picture of the sister, and he's like, yeah, but actually I didn't show him the picture. I said, I got a picture. He said, job. That's it. That's the istikhara right there. And so, like we said, the 4 rak'at, they say there's 220 odd joints in the body. And the sadaqah that we pay, the charity that we pay to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for keeping our joints healthy, is those 2 rak'at, minimum 2, at the time of duha. That's a sadaqah for our joints to keep our body healthy. And the 4 is the best. And Imam al-Suhrawardi, he says that's the time to pray istikhara. About anything going on in your life, every day. Yeah, so it's instead of whatever in my life is good, they have to make it. And if there's something specific, make it something small. Ya Allah, is it good for me to have lunch today? Ya Allah, should I have a burger or a pizza? So what? What's good for me, Ya Allah? It's the practice, right? It's that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we know what He wants for us and what's good for us. So when we make the big decisions, it's easier. We've got that connection already. They used to make istikhara about shoelaces, the Sahaba. Right? Everything. So that's that morning period, the duha, every single day. That's what we should be doing as much. I mean, sometimes you can't make it, but try and make it every single day. And that's the only sunnah prayer other than Tahiyyat al-Masjid, where it's sunnah to pray it in the mosque as well. If you can, pray it in the masjid, for the brothers in particular. Why? Because go to any masjid anywhere in the world at that time, and basically there'll be no one in that masjid from the time of sunrise, or 20 minutes after, half an hour from the duha, up until dhuhr, or a little bit before dhuhr, there'll be no one in the mosque, because everyone's doing what? Right? They're out seeking their rizq. So if you go to the house of Allah Azza wa Jalla at that time, if you can find one that's open, and then you pray there, even outside, and they've got carpets outside and whatever it is, then you get the reward for all the community of believers, if you can. And if you can't do it every day, what about it on Sunday? What about on a Saturday? What about on a public holiday? What about on a day off? What about if it's possible and some time to do it? So they're the things we have to calculate. That's what knowledge is for. So we can maximize our potential. All right? So I know it was a bit of a diversion, but I think it was an important one. Fadl.
No, what about, like, I don't get that. Like,
What do you mean?
On the spot, istikhara, like the one to work on. I don't quite get it. Like, how's that istikhara? Like,
Jazakallah khair, you proved my point, I appreciate it. Right, so, right, you're doing istikhara, right? You're doing istikhara, Sayyid. What do you want out of the istikhara? Right? Good. Yeah. So you want the job at whatever, biochemical lab, whatever. Okay? And you think, oh, it's good for me. Then the guy from the biochemical lab brings you up and says, hey, I've got a job for you. That's the answer to your istikhara. That's good. That's what's good for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent that thing to you.
yeah, but if it's still doubtful, then obviously that's not istikhara.
Well, that's a good question. If it's still doubtful, that's if the guy rings you up and says, I work in a pig slaughterhouse. Do you want to work? All right? It's not doubtful. It's completely haram. That's a different story.
But shouldn't you, like, pray first and then, no, sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. So the question is, shouldn't you pray first?
Pray still.
That's the sunnah, right? The thing is, if you're after that one, like, that's always the example, right? I mean, no one's ever going to ring you up and say, it's very rare that someone, but you want to marry so-and-so, yeah? And you're still not sure, right? You're not sure, but you like so-and-so, whoever that may be. Then her father comes to you and says, come over, right? And he talks to you about marrying his daughter. You're going to say no. Isn't that who the person that you wanted to marry? Aren't you praying to Allah to show you what's good for you? Allah is bringing the good for you. You with me? Even if you didn't pray any prayers, but it's something that's in your heart. That's the khair. So in other words, the complexity of being like, I don't know if it's, I don't understand that, like the way your generation works. You with me? Because I'm not in your generation. Right? It is too good to be true. Right? You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't have to be hard. Maybe things are hard, I don't know, but in our generation, maybe, I don't know. I don't know what it is.
I think people are getting confused because it's like what you were saying, like in terms of that, the blinkers, we've always been taught like you need to physically pray istikhara, but you're saying that's not the case. Like that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you those opportunities even without having to physically go and pray and making the dua.
Istikhara is talab al-khair. Dua al-istikhara is the dua of istikhara. Salat al-istikhara is to pray. You with me? Yeah? So it's answered. It doesn't mean you don't go and pray. You do, but you don't reject it. You with me? You can say to the person, oh look, yeah, that's a good idea. Can I think about it? And you can go pray. So, but that is fulfilling the sunnah. You with me? That's fulfilling the sunnah. But bro, like it's too hard. Habibi, you just described me who she was. This is what happened. This is what happened. You described to me who she was, what she looked like, what she had on her face. I had no idea. What she was wearing and the color of it. And then I'm saying, oh, this sister, she'd be, oh, no, I don't think, what do you mean? What? How does that make any sense? Why did you remember all these specific details? It is, like, of course it's easier for you guys than it is for us. You guys are on the deen. MashaAllah, most of you never done the kaba'ir, the major sins, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Why wouldn't it be easy? Why are you making it hard for yourselves? Like, why, we're a disaster. Our generation compared to your generation, like, MashaAllah, in other words, when I was young and someone would say, it's time to pray, like 3 people would get up and pray out of a group of 25 people or 30 people. Now, you'd be lucky to see in your generation a person that doesn't. Why shouldn't things be easier for you? Why shouldn't the nusra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the divine help, be closer to you than it is to us? Of course it should be. Of course, as a group. Now us, the people who, mashallah, went on the deen, of course the nusra of Allah is going to be closer to them because they went through the harder yards. You with me? As-sabiqun al-awwalun. Those people that were first, because they did it when things were tough, the muhajirin, for example. Those people, they're on a higher level because they did it when it was harder. Well, after Fatah Makkah, it's easy, the whole of the peninsula. You with me? Yeah. But the nusra is there. It doesn't change. So I don't know if that's just the time that, I think that's what it is. Society's like that. Everyone's you know, or the word in Arabic, I don't know how really to describe it in English, but rigid or
Traumatized.
right? Of course it should be. And you shouldn't be scared of that. If Allah makes things easy for you, don't be scared. That's the biggest ni'mah. That's the biggest blessing. Don't be scared of that. And I think that's what it is. Right? Like we're expecting, I don't know, man, like ASIO or someone or whatever, CIA to come and arrest us first or something. I don't know what it is. I mean, that's the world we live in. Right? Where everyone's afraid of everything around them. But don't be afraid of the things that come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And be aware of who the messenger is that's bringing you that news. Yeah, all right, Google, not a very good messenger. We know what they do. We know they collect information and it's not there for you. Don't think it's there for your information. It's there for someone else's information. So don't, you know, I mean, like, unless you know the reliable source where you're getting it from, that's a different story. But if it's just something there, you can't trust that. But if something comes to you from a messenger, that's Allah. Who's the person that's giving that message? Is it a man or a woman of Allah? Did it come to you through some way that Allah, you know, a leaf fell from a tree and you saw it and it meant something to you? Don't doubt yourself. Don't doubt Allah. Don't doubt Allah. What did He say? Stand and I'll walk to you. Yeah? Is it my words? No. It's not even the Prophet's words, alayhi salatu wasalam. It's Allah telling them, why doubt? Don't have that doubt. Don't doubt. And the doubt isn't within ourselves. We're hopeless. We're useless. It's in Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course I'm useless. But I'm not getting something from Allah because I deserve it, am I? Am I or not? Why am I getting it? Or why are you getting it? Right? It's Allah. It's how great He is subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how great He is. So if we stay like that, it's constantly, you know, the good old seesaw. They don't have seesaws anymore, do you? They're too dangerous now. The duty of care is too high. You know, so they took them out of the playgrounds. And they used to have I don't know what that one was called. They used to go around like that. Yeah, I forget what it's called, but they used to have that one. Now they don't have it anymore. It goes around and you have to try and hang on because of, you know, whatever. So, is that what it was, the carousel? We used to have a name for it, but I forget what it was called. But yeah, the carousel they used to have in parks, they don't have it anymore because it's too dangerous. Right? So, if it's going to just be like this, you're not ever going to go forward. And if you do go forward, it's going to be slow, hard, you know, just painstaking. And you're fighting yourself, really. You're fighting yourself. Allah loves you. Allah would never set you astray. Allah would never misguide you. Allah will never let you fall. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always be there for you. Allah wants the best for you, better than what you want for yourself. So trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the first of the maqamat is tawakkul. The first of the stations. Rely on Him. That's the sustenance you get. Don't doubt. Right, don't go into areas that are doubtful and make fatwa and halal and haram. Stay away from all that stuff. Right? But the things that are specific between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, take with both hands. And your feet. If you can grab with your feet, take. Don't let that's for you. That's a gift. And the sooner you realize that, you just start taking off after that. The curve is slow, then you'll start taking off. But you've got to realize it. I can't tell you what it is for you. I can only show you that it's there. We can only guide you to the way. But you got to, you know, they can only lead a horse to water, as the saying goes. You got to drink for yourselves. You got to drink for yourselves. And until you take that step, you're going to be feeling like you're going around. Even though you're praying and fasting, you're still going to always be feeling like you're going around in circles. But once you trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the time for the leap of faith, when you're already in the faith, not to get into the faith. That's not how it is. To get into the faith, you've got to research and understand and study and all that. But once that's there, right, then go to, he's there for you. He's telling you, walk to me, I'll run to you. So that's what Imam al-Haddad's telling us. He's setting us up for that. He's getting us to understand that. And you know, understand that the hindrances and the difficulties and the speed humps of your own generation, of the own society you live in, so don't fall into them. You know, you guys are illuminated, but you're not illuminated. Does that make sense? You hearing what I'm saying to you? You guys are illuminated. Like, look where you live. Look what's going on around you. Look what people are saying in Parliament about you. And you're all on your deen, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. The whole world's saying to you, this is wrong. No one who is not a Muslim can understand why a woman would wear hijab or why a man would fast. And yet, mashallah, Allah's given you the tawfiq to do that. That's illumination. That's illumination. And nowadays, we didn't have that. Sahih, we didn't have anyone around to guide us and all that. But there's no opposition to us. If you wore the sunnah like I used to wear, people were just like, oh, that guy's a freak. That's all. Now you're a terrorist. There's a big difference. Because a freak, just leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. But now a terrorist is, you've got to look over your shoulder 24/7. You've got to be on high alert. So you're already illuminated, but you just don't know it. And can I tell you, that's worse than not being illuminated. That's like the hungry man, right, who sees the food and knows the food's in the fridge, more correctly. That's like the hungry man who knows there's food in the fridge and doesn't eat. Right? That's like the poor person who knows that there's money in the bank and doesn't go and take it out. That's worse. I'm not saying you guys are worse. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's there. But you got to grab it. No one can grab it for you. No one can get it for you. No one can give it to you and bring it to you. You've got to take it yourself. You've got to have that drive. You've got to have that want. You've got to have that commitment. And then if you do, you'll reap the rewards. You guys will be, Allah knows. So don't forget those 4 rak'at. And he says, oh, that's enough. All right, so we'll continue the next one that God revealed to Adam alayhi salam. Are there any questions? I want you to ask questions if you have any niggling, doubts, or talk to me more correctly. Tafaddala.
SubhanAllah, I've actually been thinking about it always when it's in relation to this.
Alhamdulillah.
You know how, so each individual has a purpose on earth.
Yep.
If we realize what our purpose is and we're attaining that purpose or like going towards it, so just say like like you're physically tired from doing this thing, and then that takes away from your worship. Not takes away from your worship, but you don't have enough like energy to do your like evening afkar, for example. Is that like a nafs thing where you have to just become stronger to just like suck it up and just do it, or is it?
That's a good question. Yeah. So the question is that an individual is finding their vocation in life, their purpose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to do as an individual, right? Something that's khas for them, whatever that may be. They're a doctor, they're an engineer, they're a teacher, they're a mother, they're a son or a daughter, whatever. And at the same time, there's the general things that an individual has to do to maintain their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then sometimes their vocation overcomes, is it sometimes or all the time? All right? So if it's sometimes overcomes the specific purpose they're on, sometimes overcomes their general purpose. Okay? So the time of the Prophet of Allah salam, new people, what's his job on earth? To guide people from where to where? Right? From dhulumat ila nur. From kufr to iman. So afwaj and afwad, groups would come to Medina al-Munawwara, and the Prophet wouldn't pray his sunnah dhuhr, for example. He'd pray it later on, asr, qada of sunnah, because he never used to leave those 2 rakat of dhuhr after the salat. Okay? Sometimes. So is he fulfilling his vocation? That's his vocation. But if your vocation means that you're, like one time we went to visit one of the mashayikh and we're talking, he's like, yeah, I don't even pray Fajr on time anymore. I'm like, I'm so busy with the khidmah of the people. No, Habibi. No, you're not. You're so busy with your own khidmah, meaning serving the people. You're so busy with what you think you're doing. If you can't pray Fajr, at least before the time of Shuruq, and preferably in the masjid, then you've got to question what type of service you're doing and who you're doing service to, and etc., etc. And same with your adhkar and your awrad and your litanies and things. If it's a regular thing where you're missing them, then you've got to make an adjustment somewhere in life. Whether it's your vacation or your recreation or your socialization or whatever it is, you've got to make some adjustment there if it's a regular thing. If it's a once in a while, okay. But if you can make it up, it's better. Because the nafs really loves bludging. That's a good Aussie word, bludging. Right? We love to bludge. And if we allow our nafs to keep bludging, then we'll just forget about it. It won't become part of our routine anymore. Naam.
Sheikh, with the Qurban, is it better to do it online, or is it better to send it overseas to a family member that you know and that will cut it and that will distribute it to your family members?
All right, it's a good question about Qurban. Is it better to give it online and have it go somewhere, or is it better to give it to a family member? So it's preferable to make sure that it gets there, but at the same time, for yourself, it won't be wajib for you to slaughter. It'll be wajib for your father, if whoever's wajib upon us. But if you've got money and yours is an extra one, then it's probably best to send to the countries that need it. Unless you know where you're sending it to, that someone of your relatives or whatever is slaughtering it is giving it to people that are in need, then that's a different story. But my advice, unless it's a wajib one for you, if it's a wajib one, the best thing to do is buy the sheep or buy the goat and look after it for a while and slaughter it yourself, and that's the best thing to do. But that's not really realistic for us and probably not even legal for most of us, depending on where we do it. So that's not going to happen. So then the second option is to buy the most expensive and the best Qurban to the countries that don't have it. And if you can't do that, then lower and lower and lower. But to look for the place where there's the biggest need. And it doesn't matter. As long as you find this, like I said, Muslim Aid, we know because of Shaykh Haisam, that's the one I recommend. Or whoever, if you trust another one, that's fine as well. It doesn't matter. It's only because we know Shaykh Haisam, that's the only reason. Nothing bihi. We trust him, bi'idhnillah azza wa jal. Like I said, I've been internally and seen what, I've looked at the papers. I'm not just talking to another bloke. I went and looked at all the documents and what happened and how it was, and I'm satisfied. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. But if you're satisfied with any group or any, that's fine. Not a problem whatsoever. And if you can go to the poorest of the poor, that's the best. That's the best if you can do that, irrespective of who it is. And like I said last time, that even if it's not wajib upon you, it's a good thing to do. Like I think some of them are even $80, which for us, alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, isn't too much of a stretch. Like I said, if it's yourself and your sisters and your brothers and you get together and you each put $10 in and you do a Qurban, and that's the next point that I wanted to discuss is these last few days of the first 10 days of the Hijjah, and we spoke about how powerful and how awesome they are, and particularly Monday, the day of Arafah. The day of Arafah, many of the scholars said it's the best of all days. The best of all nights is Qadr, and the best of all days is Yawm al-Nahar, as it's called, the day of slaughtering, Eid al-Adha. And they say that on that day, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emancipates from the hellfire more than He does on any other time during the year. And it's the day that all dua is accepted as well, particularly for those who fast. And for us, because we're not there in the Hajj, we're not there in the Umrah, if people have gone and visited it, sometimes it's hard for us to connect to that Eid. So fasting those days. So tomorrow's a day off for most of us, easier to fast. Most of us have Sunday off, so it's easy to fast. And then Monday's Arafah, inshallah, so it might not be that easy to fast, but if you put the three together, inshallah, you have that feeling, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whoever fasts the day of Arafah, at least, they get forgiven 2 years. 1 year, their previous sins, and their sins going forward to the next year. And not only that, is that our avowed enemy, who's our avowed enemy? Right? He's losing it on Monday. He loses his mind. He throws dirt, like the Arabs say, he throws dirt upon himself, and what the Arabs, it's hasra, it's nadam and regret on that day. He's skinny, they say, when they see him, he's skinny, and he goes, I've been working all these years to corrupt these people, and on this one day Allah Azza wa Jalla forgives them all. So for us, that's the day for us, inshallah Azza wa Jalla. And this is a different Eid to the other Eid. Eid al-Fitr, it's only like a 1 day thing, and the next day really you're supposed to start fasting the 6 days of Shawwal. But these are the days, kulu washrabu. In Mina, in Mina, although it's Hajjaj day in Mina, so it's the first day, which is the Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. Is that right? Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. You're supposed to eat, and you're supposed to drink, because of the sacrifice they've put in. They're coming from all their far countries, and now it's a lot easier, but we can't handle as much anymore. We're not as hardy as we used to be, generally speaking. So they've come and they've been doing the nusuk and ibadah and hajj and tawaf and coming in and walking long distances from Muzdalifah to Arafah and then back to Muzdalifah and then sometimes then back to Mina or back to Mecca, back to the Kaaba to do tawaf, and then it's tiring. So these days in Mina, we're supposed to relax. And the sunnah is that you go to the Salat al-Eid, inshallah, fasting, which is the opposite of Eid al-Fitr. Then when you come back, the first thing that you're supposed to eat is from the meat of what you slaughter. But we can't do that here. So it's sunnah on the day of Eid al-Adha on Tuesday to eat meat. And if you can eat meat when you come back from the prayers. And it's sunnah both for men and women to go to them. It's better if it's not a masjid, but even if it is, it's sunnah for men and women to go to the Salat al-Eid, both of them. And it's sunnah, of course, to take your family. And then for your brothers and sisters and children, we need to make them understand that this is a special day for us. So whether it's balloons or fireworks or show bags or Eid festivals or whatever's going on, the younger generation need to know that this is a special day for us and it's a special time for us. I need to talk to them about the stories of Sayyidina Ismail and Hajar and Sayyidina Ibrahim and the meaning of the Hajj and the meaning of the Udhiyah and why we sacrifice and to give to the poor people and all these things. So it's sunnah to wear the most expensive clothes that you have also. So the best clothes that you have on the day, the most expensive, to go out and to greet people and to meet even people you don't know and wish them Eid Mubarak. And then the takbirat, the starting on the Monday night after Maghrib, and in the Shafi'iyya, it goes all the way till Friday Maghrib. The takbir after every salat, and then takbir in the streets, and takbir in the marketplaces, and takbir everywhere, because it's the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then there's a hadith that says Allah Azza wa Jalla on the day of Arafah comes to the earth, the earthly sky, and He speaks to the angels and those in the mala, in the higher heavens. He says, look at my servants. Yubahi al-malaika. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, look at my servants on earth. They're doing what I want. Bear witness that these are my servants and I've forgiven them all. So it's a day of great forgiveness for us, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, for us, it's that celebration. But to really celebrate properly, one has to actually do something. And that's the fasting, inshallah azza wa jal, if you can do tomorrow and Sunday and Monday, bi'idhnillah. If not, minimum Monday. Minimum, really, everyone needs to do that to get the full benefit. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Any questions about any of those things or anything else? Naam, tfaddal.
Sometimes Allah speaks in the hadith, but why wasn't that stuff included in the Qur'an?
So that's a hadith Qudsi. So the question is, why is there in the hadith Allah Azza wa Jal speaking? It's a hadith Qudsi, a divine hadith, if you like, that Allah Azza wa Jal told Sayyidina Rasulullah alayhi salam, because the Prophet alayhi salam had liqa, he had like a gathering with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Qur'an is separate, and the hadith Qudsi is separate, and the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salam is separate, but they're all from Allah. All of them from Allah, but they have just different standing. No, good question.
So, with like Muslim Aid or online, how would we know when they cut it like this?
Khalas, that's a good question. So how do they know when they cut it? Khalas, when you come back from the inshallah azza wa jal, from the Salat al-Eid, otherwise you might be waiting months, So when you come back, when you come back from Salat al-Eid, khalas, that's it. Because that's the sunnah. The sunnah is, I remember one time we had Eid in Bombay in India, and in the Muslim areas, like they're Hindus there, so they don't slaughter animals, but they got Muslim enclaves, and they all had their cows. And as we came back, everyone's got it on the street. They're slaughtering their sheep, they're slaughtering their goats, they're slaughtering their cows. It was amazing. It really was amazing. They got me, they said, come and slaughter them. I've never done this before. And they had this calf, and we slaughtered the calf, mashallah. And then people giving meat to everyone and to the poor people. And it's actually very, very amazing. And you can feel it. You can feel the arwah, the souls of the animals. You can. Palpable, like it's strong, subhanallah, but we don't have that. We don't have that feeling coming back from the masjid. And they do their Eidgah, they call it, which is they don't pray in the Hanafis don't pray in the mosque. They pray in a field, and you see just India. There's millions, literally millions of people coming, and they all bring their prayer mats, what do they call it, Jay Namaz, the Musalla, Saliyah, and they put it down, and they all pray, and everyone's there. The women don't really go out, it's only the men and the children, and then they greet each other and things. Alhamdulillah, it's getting better in our areas. That's why we've got to make it clear to our brothers and sisters and children, as the case might be, cousins or whatever. Like our tradition as Arabs, we give money. Go to the bank and change it, so you have a whole bunch of fives or whatever it is. Make them understand that this is a special time and this is a special thing and what it's about, so they have that connection. Otherwise, they're only going to see Easter and Christmas and Valentine's Day and all those things, and they won't have that ta'alluq, they won't have that connection with the Islamic things. Tamam? Is there any other questions? No, fadl.
So when we talked about Sayyidina Abu Bakr wearing his humble clothing, like, should we be wearing Islamic clothing, or like even if our spiritual state's not that high, like, should we still be wearing it? Or I got confused when you mentioned.
It's a good question. So it's a really good question actually about wearing Islamic clothing. It's up to yourself. The minimum you should be wearing for a male is covering your awrah, right? Which is no one should be seeing your navel except your wife. That's it. No one else is allowed to see it, or wives, as the case might be, right? Just that, and the knees have to be covered, right? And then it's the karahiyah is on wearing tight clothing. So tight clothing, unfortunately, guys are doing that. In my days in the 90s, we wore baggy jeans. I'm still on that tradition, but that's just how it was. And we wore baggy clothes. That was the trend back then. Now it's tight. So anything that tight that shows off, even worse, like some dudes walking around, their private parts are shown. You can't do that. Haram, right? You can't show off those things. So the minimum your clothes have to be is baggy enough so it doesn't give away. And even for the women, إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ minha. The ayah talks about covering for women, except that which is apparent. Okay, so if a woman's big busted or big thighs or she's super tall or broad shoulders, that's it. You can't do anything about that. But to accentuate those things by wearing tight clothes, that's where the harmani comes in. That's where it becomes haram. So as long as your clothes are loose fitting and they cover your awrah, that's fine. And there's certain colors men wearing, like what's that orange? Saffron. It's munkar. It's nuhi anha. We shouldn't be wearing those, so that'd be like fluorescent colors and things like that. We shouldn't be wearing, neither men or women should be wearing those colors. But neither should we be wearing black for the women all the time and, those types of things. So there's a fair bit of scope in those things, but as long as we're not showing off, because it's the zina. Well, for both men and women, we shouldn't be showing off what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to everyone, because it doesn't belong to everyone, both men and women. Other than that, it's okay. And then dress for your appropriate occasion as well. You're not going to wear sunnah and go and watch the footy, really. You might, but you're not going to probably go to the beach. I don't know, you might. It's up to you to wear appropriate clothing. That if you're working on site, you got to wear steel cap boots and high vis.
Right, high vis. Complained that he wasn't allowed to be a site manager because he was always wearing sunnah.
Yeah.
He kept the job until he was wearing sunnah.
That's fine, but not on site. You can't do that. There's health. There's safety. Don't wear he should have made a sunnah with reflective things on it then, if he wants to be there. There's a reason for that. You can't drive a car without lights. There's a reason. It's safety. So when those things apply, then we have to do those things. Whatever it might, hard hats and all those things. You know what I mean? They're there for a reason. They're there for people's protection. And then the flow-on effect. It's not just about me and what I want to do. We have a public health system here. The guy gets injured, it's going to cost us, the taxpayers. Why should we unnecessarily have to pay for someone who didn't follow regulations that are there for his or her own protection? So we've got to understand that that's the world we live in today, and our deen allows us to live in that world. If he wants to wear sunnah, fine, right? But get high vis sunnah, bro. Like, whatever, put those reflective things on it and whatever. Like it's got to be to the standards of whoever's making those standards.
Even if your spiritual state doesn't reflect who you are, should you still, because remember you mentioned that, should we still be wearing, can we still be wearing?
Like I said, it's up to you. It's up to you. The question is, should we be wearing it if we don't feel it? Maybe sometimes you don't feel it, but maybe like one of the brothers I knew back in the day is one of those guys that women like him and he likes women. Wherever he goes, he just ends up in that situation. And then, this is before September 11 and all those things. And then he used to always wear sunnah. And then his friends were Muslim and non-Muslim. They used to give him a hard time. And he never used to say why. He's left that life, right? And then one day, everyone was giving him a hard time. And then he told me, he goes, I wear sunnah because if I don't, I'm going to get in trouble with women. You with me? So if the sunnah protects you, or the beard, or wearing a hat, or wearing whatever it is, if it protects you, it might also protect you from some detriment, right? And you've got to work that out. It's your life. You got to work out where you sit on that spectrum, right? And vice versa, if you're going to wear the sunnah and go somewhere and get beaten up, you got to decide if you're going to make that choice or not. That's up to you. You know what I mean? Like every time I walk past the pub, it's always funny, and they've had a couple of drinks. Ah, brother, assalamu alaikum. They always say it, white guys. Ah, assalamu alaikum. How you going? There you go, fellas. Right, but you're going to go in there. It's a different story. So you've got to make those decisions. That's a personal decision that you make for yourself as to how you want to dress, when you want to. Like someone like Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, sometimes you see him wearing a suit. Sometimes he wears that Mauritanian, amama, a turban with the. And when he goes to the White House, he wears something in between. And you've got to make that determination. And others, right? That's a choice you've got to make. He's, mashallah, been wearing those since the 70s. And never, if he goes to a footy game, if he goes to the beach, if he goes anywhere, it's a promise he made to himself for whatever reason there is, right? For whatever, it's not my business, not your business. That's what he does. And people will be critical of you. People will be critical. One brother, he's saying, oh, why do you dress like that? There's a straight. Don't dress like that, but don't criticize me for dressing like that. You with me? And if I dress like that, don't criticize others that have decided, but someone, like I said, they're wearing tight clothes and it's accentuating their features, then the nasiha doesn't always go astray. But it's not about one thinking one is better than anyone else. That's not what it's about. Good question?
I actually have a question.
Brother.
So just on the point you touched on regarding how our generation is a bit more like rigid in terms of what they learn and holding strong to that. I came across a podcast this week and it touched on like the concept of spiritual abuse. What's like your, I guess, recommendation in terms of, men and women identifying whether it's, a relationship like a teacher-student relationship or a spousal relationship? How do you identify, or what are the red flags, I guess, for us to take notice of that may indicate you're in a type of relationship that, there's that spiritual abuse?
So what are we talking about here? The question's about spiritual abuse. So I'm not familiar with the term. So how is it defined?
Basically, it was just, the way it was explained was it's when someone uses religion to seek power, to seek control over another person. And that's all that was mentioned about it. I guess it was a new concept for me also, so I just wanted to know whether there was something Islamically that we can do in terms of approaching a scenario like that.
Sure. So that kind of, if you want to call it spiritual abuse, unfortunately it's a common thing. And the Prophet ﷺ warned about it. He said, "Akhwafu ma akhafu alaykum ulama as-su," the evil scholars that come at the end of time. So it's anything that goes outside the bounds, right? It's anything that goes outside the bounds in terms of if it's a sexual thing, it's khalwa. You can't be one-on-one with a person of the opposite gender in a room that's locked that no one can access. It's haram. You can't. So when it approaches those things, when there's inappropriate, just like any type of workplace sexual harassment, they're obvious, those ones. Everyone knows, touching, inappropriate comments, exactly the same when it comes to those things in terms of spiritual. And financially, if the person that has the spiritual status is asking you for money and telling you to spend money upon that person or to sell your property then that's a problem. That's the problem. The people who are doing spiritual things should stick to spiritual things, and the people doing financial things should stick to financial things, and the twain should really never meet. As well as political activism. If someone's going to tell you to do something for their own, especially when it becomes a personal benefit to that individual. And unfortunately, it's rampant, and it's something that we all need to be aware of so we don't fall into that, long stories that we don't really need to get into, but it's unfortunately rampant, So what I call it is you guys weren't around, but Jimmy Swaggart, you ever heard of him? Look him up, Jimmy Swaggart. He's like he was one of the first televangelists, and he just became super wealthy, and he was sleeping with all types of women. And he's a preacher. He's a Christian preacher in the United States. So I think we're at that stage now where we've got these super personalities, right? And they're very wealthy, and they've got all this property, and they've got these immense centres that are worth millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they're in their own personal names, and they own the property, and they've got everyone working for them. That's not what it's about. So you've got to be, and that goes back to one of the three things that we have su'u dhann in. Be careful who you take your knowledge from. And you need to be careful who that individual is and what their background. Or the other guy who's not even doesn't have the ijazas and doesn't have and he's telling people that he does, and he's embezzling money out of the organisation. That's red flags, and the onus is upon us to check it out. The person's not going to come and tell you, oh yeah, I got busted, I got imprisoned or whatever, or community service bond because I embezzled money. No one's going to come and tell you those things. You've got to find out for yourself. And that's one thing that, while we're on that note, that we don't want to take responsibility for. We want it to be easy because it is easy, isn't it? Not even that anymore, it's that. It's not even that anymore. We don't have to use all 10 fingers, you just use 2 now. Is that how you do it? Right? So we want it to be easy. It's not easy. If you want Allah, you've got to work for it. You've got to sacrifice the thing you love most. Whether that's your comfort, whether that's your convenience. They're really the only 2 things. Why are we selling our information? Huh? Why are we selling our information, our fingerprints, our voices? Why are we selling our information? Why? That's it, convenience. No other reason. There's no other reason. Oh, it's on the cloud, it's easy, I can access it from anywhere. Oh, I can just press my button, face recognition, I can get into my bank account. That is all. It's okay, I don't want to. If you need counselling, we'll provide some services, right? That's the reality. Why are we the lights? Why are we damaging our health? Why are we damaging our wealth? Why are we damaging our spiritual states and our psychological states? Convenience. Khalas. Why do we buy packaged foods that have got petrol in them? Because it's convenient. I don't want to have to go and grow my own food. Oh my goodness. And then wash it. I actually have to wash my food, believe it or not. And I have to chop it. Then I've got to clean up after myself. And I actually have to chew when I'm eating it. No, don't worry about chewing. Just buy the whole, whatever, not even real food, and just kind of a couple of them and swallow it. Don't worry about chewing. Don't worry about that no more. You don't have to worry about that. And that's the only reason. Din is not convenient. It's not 20. No, I have to leave home now. I love that Uber Eats. I haven't used that, but it's just the concept. It's the concept. But then I've got a friend who works for a restaurant, and he says they take a massive amount of money from the restaurants. But for convenience, we'll pay the money, don't worry. And he's telling me people, this is what he says to me, he goes, they send the Uber Eats for a can of Coke. 1 can of Coke, they send. I was like, no, they don't. He's like, bro, they do. Allahu Akbar, where are we going? What are we? We're going to sell our deen for convenience soon. Soon we're going to sell our deen for convenience. So unfortunately, it's not convenient. And then when something happens, we want to blame the person that, when we do a deal with someone, we buy a car that's a lemon, we want to blame the Habib. He sold his car. He did his job. His job is to be a crook. Your job is to expose that crook, whether he's a teacher, a sheikh, whether it's a spouse you want to marry, or whether it's someone you're doing business with. That's your job. That's your job. Make sure that the person you take your knowledge from isn't a crook. And if they were 20 years ago or 30 years ago and they've made tawbah, then you have to make an educated decision as to whether you want to continue to take your knowledge from that person or not. That's your choice. But you have to have the information to make that choice, not whinge later on and cry later on, oh, this person did that by me and it's your fault. You enabled that person to take advantage of you. That's what our deen says. I'm not saying that. That's what our deen says. Find out who you take your knowledge from. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. If you really look and you scratch the surface, you're not going to like what you see. But you're better to scratch the surface now and not like what you see than 6 years, 7 years, 10 years later, after you've been with that individual and learning from it, and you say, oh my God, that person was a charlatan. Like I heard about one person, apparently he's wealthy and he's highly educated and he's famous, you know him, I don't want to mention the guy's name. And then one of my clients actually did business with him and he's saying to me, this guy, nah man, he's a complete fraud. He's not educated, he doesn't even have money, he's this. And I was like, wow. I'd much rather know that now than do business with the person and later on lose whatever and. So that's the truth. Like I said, it's not convenient. It's not worshipping Allah isn't about convenience. Yeah? It's about hard work. It's about sacrifice. I know they're words we don't like to hear. It's about those things. And that's what gives us that. That's what makes us different in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from everyone else who's run of the mill. Alright, so that's a good question, mashallah. Got to work it out. No.
Jack, you mentioned with the spiritual abuse how some people can use spirituality as leverage.
Exactly.
And it does seem apparent, especially in sort of the Arabic-speaking communities, of people misusing the word haram and using that word specifically to try and make, almost fatwas on the spot on, things. Oh no, you can't do that. That's haram. Or you can't, block the shade of an animal. That's haram. You can't. They misuse that word. And a lot of people have come up and defended it, like, oh no, but that's just the way we do it. Like we say wallah all the time, it means nothing. But that's a way for them to get around controlling people by putting it in. And even saying, no, you can't go out that night of the week, that's haram. People making fatwas on the stop, you can't, going out late at night, that's haram. There's all these things people doing on the stop. Do you have any advice on going against that, especially if it's someone that, like a family member or someone that you have to try and rationalize it with?
So the question is about people trying to control and coerce using the deen. So the question is, that's where you have to know your deen. You have to study the deen, understand your deen, especially when it comes to things of halal, haram. And then the choices you make are for you and about you, and you've got to bear the consequences of those decisions that you make. Now the issue is this: what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about the people who don't know? He says, وَعْرَضْ عَنِ الجَّاهِلِينَ وَإِذَا خَاطَبَكُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قُولُوا سَلَامًا. Right? So the first one, warid, is people are going to be ignorant about their deen or whatever they're ignorant about. Jahal is not to know. Majhul is unknown. If their deen is unknown to them, then what are you going to talk to them about? What are you going to convince them about? You can only convince someone that's got something. In other words, they have to have some possessory aspect of whatever it may be for you to actually give and take with that person. But if that person's got nothing, what are you going to try and convince them of? You can't. See, it has to be. And the other one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Qul lahum salama." Keep peace between yourself and those people. So if they do say it's haram or whatever, you're not going to be able to explain to them, how it's got to be dalil qat'i and it's got to be. They're not going to get that. To them, it doesn't make sense. They're using it in a colloquial sense. And the word haram has its meaning in Arabic, in the Arabic language, and has its meaning in the shara, in the sharia, and it has its meaning in what they call the urf, whatever colloquial language, and that's what they probably mean. So haram meaning Allah doesn't like that. And so my advice is keep the friction as low as possible. So if you have to go out on that night or do that thing, just don't let those people know that you're doing it. If you can avoid. If it's your parents, but don't be careful about. If it's your parents, you've got to be careful because you can't go against your parents' word. That's problematic unless it's going to damage your deen. So if they're telling you don't go out to a class, then you're entitled to. But you need to make sure that you try and maintain harmony in the home and respect to your parents. Now, if it's someone who's outside of that, sometimes you might have to make that sacrifice. If you don't want to upset, it depends on your personality. Like me, I don't care, I just do it. That's how I am. But other people are not like that. So it depends on the relationship you have. But sometimes that individual means a lot to you. You don't want to ruin that relationship, so you might have to make that sacrifice. And sometimes we don't have the strength to take on that battle, and we just have to let that one slide. So it comes back to the individual. But I think trying to rationalize things with people who don't have the capacity, it's a big mistake, because in the end you end up getting frustrated and it damages the relationship between yourself and that individual. All right, any other questions? No.
Is there like a hadith that says there's not a generation that comes that is worse than the one that's before it? There's not a generation that is not worse than the one that comes before it. That's what I understand.
If it's not in Arabic, it's hard for me to tell you exactly because things get lost in translation. But there's if anyone has to leave, you're entitled. Please leave. So there's a hadith that says no one knows where the best of my ummah is, whether it's at the beginning or whether it's at the end. So we could be like, and the hadith says, we could be like 50 of the Sahaba. Is that the one you're referring to?
It was different. I'll just check it